Here what you have is a family-run company in which a very, very interesting, and some would say old-style kind of business or capitalism succeeded, beyond measure. That is, employees came to work, they stayed at their jobs, their kids came into the family, some married, found their spouses at the company. Generations worked for DeMoulas. They were paid well, they're still paid well, they have good benefits, they get bonuses, and then enter Arthur T., who, walks around and comes to their bar mitzvahs and asks about their autistic children. And you have a very, very interesting, very successful recipe for a business that's run very differently than the harsh, turbocharged flywheel of lots of corporate America.
You got Arthur S. on one side, Arthur T. on the other. How would you mediate this?
Well, I saw that just very recently, in the last few days, Arthur T. said, I'll come in and hold the reins of operations without any necessary long-term commitment while we figure out how to bring this business back. I think if I were a mediator, I'd try and get Arthur S. and the co-CEOs, Thornton and Gooch, to accept that. And then see what we can do once we have a functioning supply chain, once we have full shelves, and once we have customers that are coming into the DeMoulas they know and love.
All right, I'll give them your number. Nancy Koehn, thanks for joining us.
I'm a historian of 19th century America, and I think of Lincoln as this towering figure of the 19th century, of the 20th century in some sense for Americans and people around the world. But, I'm not sure that Edison doesn't eclipse Lincoln. He was so well known. He was so admired. Some of that was his own doing, and a lot of that was just the incredible interest he compelled by virtue of what he did and how he did it at a moment when the modern world was being done. But the interesting thing about Edison is it wasn't just Americans. Lots of people were interested in him. He became famous all over the globe. But Edison, like Rockefeller, understood that there was no halting this incredibly broad, incredibly powerful kind of wave of change that was sweeping over America. So why not a phonograph? We don't think originally it's going to be for music, but then it's going to be for music, right? A light bulb. And then we got to figure out how to make it available to everyone, which means, just like Rockefeller building the value chain from black gold to kerosene and later gas for automobiles, we're going to have to create an electric power and distribution system. I mean, again, that breadth and the lack of self-doubt about whether he should pursue it. He doesn't sound like my business school students, right? At 28, graduating from Harvard Business School, what shall I do with my life? Shall I do this? He doesn't have that kind of, I'm not sure he even has the kind of, the software to ask those questions. You just move into the vision and grab it with both hands in that fertile mind. That busy kaleidoscope, impressive filing system, how we figured out, well, this is what I'll need inside me to do this. I'm going to need to say no to this and yes to this. How many things the man said no to, boggles the mind. And he, way, 110 years before Steve Jobs understood that all those no's were yes to something else. And so, it's the person, it's the stage, and it's also, and also it's the self-cultivation and self-development that we would not give him high marks to on the emotional front, right, on the intimacy front. But surely we must, by virtue of what he did and how he did it, give him high marks in terms of what he was able to do with his own gifts, right, and certainly, with respect to all these inventions and organizations.
Michael Davis, is he right that the ultimate battle for Amazon is Amazon versus Google? I'd never heard that before, but Nancy seemed to agree. Is that done?
I'd buy that. It's about actually making all of this stuff easy. So I agree completely with Nancy. There's some combination of easy and efficient is really hard to beat.
So Amazon Go is what Dan's talking about. It's a fascinating experiment here. You walk into the store, you can load the app as you walk in on your smartphone, you pick up, I'll have this yogurt. No, I think I'll change my mind. It scans and takes it out and puts it back in again when you choose the new flavor. You walk out, it charges it all to your card, has a receipt for you before you've taken 10 paces away from the store. And it is a really interesting experiment. You can bet they're going to apply some of that technology in Whole Foods stores. But let's if we back up just one step, this is Amazon. They have mighty ambitions. You know, it is Standard Oil, right, in 1890, figuring out how can we lock this thing up. You can't lock up retailing if you're not in bricks and mortar, no matter how fast the world is changing and moving online.
You're anticipating every direction I want to go in with this conversation.
The story of the modern beauty market, personal care market, owes very much to the nature of the rivalry between Elizabeth Arden and Helena Rubinstein. It's fascinating. And as much as the story is about lipstick and rouge and powder and helping women, most American women on the eve of the First World War barely owned a toothbrush, much less used lipstick every day, helping women discover that world, the story is also about the kind of edginess and at times animosity between these two women that powered each of them. They got wind beneath their wings from many different sources, but one of the important gusts was how much they wanted to best the other, and the looking over each of their shoulders at the other person. Would I have wanted to work for either of these women in that kind of race? Perhaps not. Did it in the end help create a fantastically important, interesting, huge market that's very much with us today? Yes, it did. So, what do we mean by Henry Ford the Tinkerer? We don't mean someone who's walking around constantly, playing and toggling and, fiddling with different things. He wasn't like that. He was fascinated by machines from a very early age, and he hated the farming that his erstwhile father so earnestly wanted him to engage in. Like Lincoln, he had no patience or interest in his father's path. But from an early age, he's fascinated by machines. And he's not fascinated by every machine. He's fascinated by particular machines, those that he's working on, those that are under his watch. And so, he would approach a machine or look at a machine or watch a process at the Edison Manufacturing Company, for example, where he spends time before he discovers automobiles, or take the quadricycle, and he would play with it. And he would move parts around, and then he would test it, and then he would go back and move some more parts. So this iterative process that is about focusing on a single operation or a single set of components that comprise a machine, and then trying for the small improvement, and then experimenting to see if that small improvement is effective, and then going back to make that improvement even better or to add others to it. There's a kind of both, again, breadth of vision in that kind of activity, but there's also a kind of monomaniacal focus. And both those seemingly contradictory qualities exist in Henry Ford's tinkering. No detail is too small, but the overall objective, make the thing better, is never lost sight of.